Welcome to a new edition of France in Focus. I'm Nadia Sharbi, and this week we delve into the difficult issue of prostitution. I'm here in Paris's red light district, and while prostitutes have largely left the area, Pigalle does remain openly associated to the sex industry, what with its strip joints, sex shops and erotica museum. But look beyond the titillating postcard scene and you'll find that most of France's often foreign sex workers are the victims of human trafficking. That's why, since April 2016, lawmakers have put the onus on clients by punishing them with hefty fines, a measure that has its critics take a look.
This is one of Paris's most famous red light districts, the Bois de Boulogne on the western edge of the French capital. Anyone coming here to buy sex now risks a €1,500 fine. Many sex workers say the new law is bad for business.
It's difficult, really difficult. The police stop, fine someone, then others see that and they stop coming here. The fines are really expensive.
Some sex workers organised protests against the law. It's estimated there are between 30 to 40,000 prostitutes in France. 80% of them are not French.
We're against criminalising clients because it will make the situation for sex workers more precarious. Precarity will lead to more illegal activity, violence and exploitation.
But those who support the law also protested. They say prostitutes will now find it easier to seek police protection if they need it.
When they're harassed, they can make a formal complaint with the police, something they didn't dare to do before. The power balance between the clients will completely change and prostitutes will be in the position of power. They won't be guilty or criminals. The clients will be the ones doing something illegal.
Criminalizing the clients means reversing the shame. The crime of buying a body for whatever reason. When someone buys a body, that's a crime.
France has followed Sweden's lead, which began prosecuting clients 17 years ago. Official evaluations show street prostitution has halved, but sex workers have adapted, offering services online, making it harder for police to arrest clients. Norway, Iceland and Northern Ireland have also adopted the so-called Swedish model, with mixed results so far.
Well, this new law is certainly a departure for France, where up until the end of the Second World War, Paris's famous brothels were a must-see, both for local luminaries and visiting dignitaries alike. The state-owned bordellos were known as maisons closes, and the most successful courtesans became wealthy celebrities in their own right. As you can tell from the beautiful Art Deco facade behind me, once home to one such grand horizontal, as they were nicknamed. Well, Fernand Vantets has more on the end of a permissive era.
Number placards like this are a telltale sign. Bigger, more colourful and elaborate than the rest, they betray the house's past.
These mosaics show the name of the former madame of this old brothel. She was called Alice. It was reserved for the clergy of Saint-Sulpice Church, but especially the lower clergy and priests.
70 years ago, Paris had close to 200 of such establishments, including the Sphinx, the 122, and here the Aux Belles Poules.
Here, Parisians and foreign visitors would come to admire tableaux vivants, live representations of paintings, for example, of the Three Graces, and there would be a true life version. At a time when showing even an ankle could send a very erotic signal, here you could see full nudes representing mythological themes.
But in 1945, a Paris councillor called Marthe Richard ended such organised debauchery. Her proposal to ban the brothels was adopted, and the capital's pleasure houses had to close their doors before March 1946. It was a decision she still defended years later.
I asked the girls, if the brothels were open, would you go? And they said no. Even the poor girls of Marseille who were waiting for customers said they prefer this, because now they are free to go where they want, can go out when they want, and choose their own customers.
She knew what she was talking about. As a young girl, she worked in one of the soldiers' brothels, where girls would see 50 clients a day. She married an industrialist, became a female pilot, a spy, and even ascended to the stage before becoming a politician.
Marthe Richard was not the first one to have this idea. She wasn't the first to call for the closing of so-called houses of tolerance. Just before and during the war, there were already towns, most notably Grenoble, Lille and Saint-Étienne, which took measures against such legal brothels.
But in Paris, the brothels were the ultimate symbol of collaboration with the German occupiers. During the war, as this ledger proves, the brothels flourished.
Here you can see all the receipts, for example, with the official ink and tax stamp right here.
The interiors of the pleasure houses were sold several years after their closure. The gilding of Le Chabanais, regularly visited by English and Indian princes, was sold in 1951. It had been slow to close. The prostitutes were once again to be found on the sidewalk, as they are today. For how long remains the question.
In the late 19th century, this café in the popular theatre district of the Grand Boulevard was one of Paris's most famous pleasure houses, as its opulent decor testifies. And I come here to meet with journalist Sophie Bouillon, who's interviewed hundreds of prostitutes both in France and abroad, and has published a selection of their accounts under the title Elle. Sophie Bouillon, hello, thank you for being with us.
Hello.
Could you start by telling us a little bit about the French attitude to prostitution?
It's very difficult to change the mentalities in France. Like we saw, the law took 3 years to pass. It's seen as a feminist, very leftist feminist issue. So I think in France we still have this view of sex revolution that we had in the 70s, covered with a lot of paternalism. But I think the scenario has really changed. Now we are in 21st century with a lot of issues that they didn't have in the 70s, and the mentalities have not really changed in this regard.
And what's the attitude in France to the clients?
Well, actually, I think no one is naive, no one is stupid. The law is really hard to put in place. But I think for 3 years, while the law was discussed in Parliament, the society has itself questions. And also, the state, the French state, has decided that we don't accept that. We don't accept that a client who goes with a prostitute from Nigeria, from Romania in the streets, can get away with it without feeling part of it.
And you mentioned Nigerians there, and this, you talked about a process and a system. We're talking about networks of human traffickers, and you looked into the Nigerian network. Tell us about that.
Yeah, every network is different. So I focused on the Nigerian network, and what happens is like they go and meet with people who tell them, I take you to Europe. Once you are in Europe, I give you fake papers, I give you a place to stay, but you owe me 50,000 euros. So that's how they get trapped. And they arrive and they are sent in the forest in Italy. They have 6, 7, 8, 10 clients per night, and the nightmare starts. And it's really hard to get out of it.
And internet has become an important platform for prostitutes. Is that a danger in itself?
It has changed radically the way of people behaving with women, but I think it's not only prostitution, but for example, you know, I went to all the escorting websites, so it's more like you comment, you put stars, like if it was 1 star or 5 stars, like you classify the women in very violent, extremely violent terms.
They've become a product.
Totally.
And a lot of them insist that here in France, the ones who are on the streets in France who are not part of networks, insist that they've chosen this life. You've spoken to a lot of these prostitutes. Do you have a clearer idea about that, about this idea of a choice?
Every case, every woman is different, every client is different, so it's very difficult. You know, I compare it a lot with drugs. I think for clients as well as for sex workers, it's a drug. It's an addiction, more than a choice.
Sophie Bouillon, thank you very much for having spoken to us. Well, because they work in the shadows, prostitutes aren't often given a voice, and that's especially true of transgender sex workers who feel doubly marginalised. Claire Williams spoke to Colombia-born Giovanna. Here's her story.
C'est à l'âge de 23 ans, en 93, que je me suis vraiment dit, voilà, je quitte la Colombie parce qu'à ce moment-là, il y avait beaucoup de violence beaucoup de transphobie et c'était un pays qui avait pas mal de conflits à ce moment-là. Je me retrouve séropositive, donc je remets en question tout. Jusqu'à ce moment-là, j'étais plutôt, entre guillemets, putophobe. Et je me rends compte qu'en fin de compte, j'avais tort et que c'était un métier parce qu'il passait d'être une minorité stigmatisée à être quelqu'un qui prenait le pouvoir dans leur vie et dans la vie sociale et dans la vie économique. Et je trouvais ça génial en fait. Je me suis dit, en fin de compte, c'est le moment de commencer à vivre dans la réalité. Je suis arrivé directement au bois et j'avais déjà des copines colombiennes qui avaient leur place, comme on appelle leur territoire. Et je faisais mes clients directement dans la forêt en fait. Après, j'ai commencé un peu à faire le travail du sexe par internet, donc à la maison, parce que ça me faisait aussi flipper. En fait, je travaillais toujours la nuit et il faut dire que c'est quand même assez dangereux. On s'est mis en tête de créer un nouveau projet parce que jusqu'au présent, on voyait que tous les projets soi-disant communautaires, en fin de compte, ils finissaient pour être portés par des experts, médecins, autres, que vraiment les gens issus de la communauté. Les retours qu'on a ici, c'est les gens qui arrivent en pleurs parce que le loyer n'attend pas, parce qu'ils s'attendaient pour envoyer un peu d'argent chez eux, parce qu'ils n'ont plus d'argent en poche, et parce que le téléphone, ils n'en sont plus, et parce qu'au bois, il n'y en a plus de clients. Ce n'est pas une loi qui va vraiment aider, c'est une loi qui va plutôt accompagner vers le suicide social, voire physique, ces personnes-là.
Well, that's all we're leaving this edition. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.